almost cried out Epstein Island. And I went, oh, okay. Now I understand what we're about.
Y'all, this is the moment everything stopped feeling like a rumor and started looking like something much darker. Because what happens when a man who's been warning people for years suddenly can't even finish a sentence? What happens when Jim Caviezel, a man who survived lightning strikes, who walked away from Hollywood, who's seen things most people couldn't handle, completely breaks down? Not on camera for attention, not for a role, but after seeing documents he was never supposed to see. And according to multiple reports, what he saw wasn't just disturbing, it was devastating. We're talking about files connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Files that raised questions no one has been able to answer. 6 industrial drums. Sulfuric acid. Ordered immediately after an indictment. Now ask yourself, why? Why then? Why not before? And why does that detail keep coming up in conversations people usually avoid? Because some believe this wasn't about maintenance. Some believe it was about making things disappear. And when Caviezel connected those dots, when he thought about the missing children, the cases that go cold, the faces no one can find, he didn't argue. He didn't speculate. He just stopped. And in that silence, something felt different. Because this isn't just a story anymore. This is the part where people start asking questions they were never supposed to ask.
It's the people that are like really interested in reading all the email. When you get indicted for trafficking and then you order 6 drums of sulfuric acid right away, are you really worried about your reverse osmosis plant right after you get indicted? I feel like you're going to jail.
It looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. It's probably a duck.
How many of the kids that are being human trafficked actually get discovered? We're finding this 5 here, 6 here, these
but how many actually are there?
How many of them actually are there? Do we know? We don't.
It didn't happen all at once. There was no headline, no breaking news alert, no moment where the world suddenly stopped and paid attention. Instead, it built quietly. For years, Jim Caviezel had been saying the same thing over and over again. Not in whispers, not behind closed doors, but publicly. He talked about networks. He talked about operations. He talked about things most people refuse to even think about. And every single time, the response was identical. Dismiss him. Label him. Move on. Conspiracy theorist. Religious extremist. Washed-up actor trying to stay relevant. It was easier that way. Because if he was wrong, you could ignore him. But if he was right, then everything changes. And that's exactly where things started to shift. Because behind the scenes, pieces were moving. Documents were surfacing. Old cases were reopening. Names that were once protected started appearing in places they weren't supposed to. And at the center of it all was one name that refused to go away. Jeffrey Epstein. At first, it looked like a closed story. An isolated scandal. One man. One island. One network. But then, the details didn't stop. They multiplied. Flight logs. Associations. Timelines that didn't line up. And then came the part that made even skeptics pause. Not rumors. Not anonymous sources. But documented records that raised a question no one could easily answer. 6 drums. Industrial grade. Sulfuric acid.
Not everything you don't understand adds up to the worst possible thing it could be.
That's why I just go with grain of salt. This is just a plausible answer. I don't know that it is the answer. It could even be wrong.
Ordered immediately after a federal indictment. No delay. No gradual request. No prior pattern that matched the timing. Just immediate action. And suddenly, people who had been ignoring everything else leaned in. Because this wasn't abstract anymore. This was specific. This was measurable. This was real enough to make people uncomfortable. Some argued there was an explanation. A technical reason. Water treatment. Maintenance. Infrastructure.
Looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck. It's probably a duck.
It's probably a duck.
And maybe, that's true. But others looked at the timing and couldn't ignore it. Because timing changes everything. Before, it's routine. After, it becomes a question. And that question kept getting louder. Why then? Why right after the indictment? Why that quantity? And why does it connect to everything else people have been trying not to look at? Because while this detail was circulating, something else was happening at the same time. Stories about missing children. Cases that never closed. Names that never came back. Numbers that didn't make sense. And when you place those two things side by side,
is just the beginning of this whole thing. It's an 8-armed octopus, and if you take just out, that arm will grow back. You have to take the head.
The discomfort grows. Now add one more layer. The way communication allegedly happened. No sent messages. No received messages. No direct trail. Just shared access. Draft folders. Conversations that technically never existed. If true, it changes how everything is tracked. Because you can't trace what was never sent. You can't recover what was never stored. And suddenly, the idea of things disappearing doesn't feel impossible anymore. It feels designed. And that's the moment everything shifted for Caviezel. Not when he heard it. Not when he talked about it. But when he saw enough pieces, placed close enough together, that ignoring it was no longer an option. That's when the emotion hit. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just overwhelming. Because when a theory starts to look like a pattern, and a pattern starts to look intentional, you're left with something far more difficult than fear. You're left with realization. And realization is the part people don't recover from easily.
Jojo is here and we'll walk the jerky over to Jeffrey. We'll walk the jerky over to Jeffrey. Why would jerky walk around? Why would it do that? There is one bag of beef jerky in the fridge. Please get it. Also, Blank has more at her place. Please get it from her as well. I suppose it needs to be in a cold, insulated bag. He said he has 6 bags of it in a downstairs freezer. Why would you freeze jerky? Steve needs a 6 to 8 ounce portion of jerky.
And that realization didn't stay isolated. Because the moment those details started circulating, they reached someone who had been watching all of this unfold from a distance. Mel Gibson. Now this is where things get uncomfortable. Because Gibson isn't new to controversy. He's not new to being dismissed. And he's definitely not new to saying things that people don't want repeated. But according to those close to him, when these details reached him, his reaction wasn't shock. It was recognition. Not confusion. Not disbelief. Just a quiet, unsettling acceptance. Like someone who had seen enough to stop being surprised. And that reaction alone raised more questions than answers. Because when two people from completely different paths start pointing in the same direction, you have to ask yourself why. Both Gibson and Jim Caviezel were already connected through one of the most controversial films ever made. The Passion of the Christ. A film that faced backlash, pressure, attempts to shut it down before it even reached audiences. And now, years later, both of them are again attached to something that many believe is being pushed out of sight. But here's where it escalates. Because this isn't just about two actors. This is about what happens when certain stories don't get covered the way others do. Think about it. Major headlines dominate cycles for days, weeks, sometimes months. But then, stories involving missing children, large-scale investigations, suddenly fade. Quickly.
The guys would come up and they were, right in front of us, ask us if we wanted niñas or niños and little boys or little girls.
Too quickly. And people have started noticing. Because while entertainment news floods timelines, some of the darkest stories barely register. A mention. A brief report. Then silence. And that silence is where suspicion grows. Some say it's because the topic is too disturbing, too heavy, too uncomfortable for mainstream audiences. Others say it's something else, something more deliberate. Because when information is available, but attention is missing, that's not absence. That's selection. Now add another layer to this. Connections. Names that appear next to other names. People seen together, in places, at times, that only start to matter after everything else comes out.
At the emails that have been widely circulated pertaining to the age 11, and I have it written down on my notes, the permission to kill email, the Snow White, the littlest girl was naughty, etc. And some of them pertaining to, jerky, whatever that is. Yeah.
And so, and so just quick follow, what is jerky? Like, what is that exactly?
I think that's the question. I don't know if it's like, and again, like going into specifically just based on what this is, I don't know.
It's a code word.
Context
it has to be a code word. Nobody talks about jerky like this.
Weird. Yeah, it's a code word.
Associations that once looked normal suddenly don't. And this is where the pattern becomes harder to ignore. Because it's not about one event anymore. It's about repetition. The same types of connections. The same circles. The same proximity. Over and over again. And when that pattern forms, it creates something bigger than coincidence. It creates structure. A system that doesn't rely on secrecy alone, but on familiarity. On trust. On people feeling safe because of who is standing next to who. And once that illusion breaks, everything connected to it starts to look different. Now go back to the beginning.
They don't hit send, but they have the password for multiple emails, and they'll just go in, get the message, and then never open or close it, so it's impossible basically to track. It's just like a draft.
Oh, I see. And so other people have the login to the account,
password, and
they check it out through the draft.
The acid, the timing, the missing cases, the communication methods. Individually, they raise eyebrows. But together, they create something much harder to dismiss. And that's exactly what pushed this story further. Because now, it's no longer about proving anything. It's about questioning everything. Why certain details appear and then disappear. Why some stories are amplified while others are buried. Why some names are protected while others are exposed. And most importantly, why people who speak about these things often end up being the ones attacked the most. Because if there's nothing there, why react at all? And that question is where this stops being just a story and starts becoming something else entirely. Something deeper. Something people are only just beginning to look at. And once they do, there's no going back.
She believed consumption was transformation, that youth could be taken in, that vitality could be absorbed. She talked about ancient rites, about elites throughout history who understood what the masses didn't.
And this is where everything stops being distant. Because up until now, you could still look at it from the outside. As a story. As something happening somewhere else, to someone else. But that illusion doesn't last. Not when the details start lining up. Not when the same questions keep coming back, without answers. Because at the center of all of this isn't just a name. It isn't just a network. It's a question. Where did they go? The children who were never found. The cases that never closed. The reports that quietly disappeared from headlines. Numbers get mentioned. Statistics get repeated. But numbers don't hit the same way as reality. Reality is a face. A voice. A family waiting for answers that never come. And according to multiple reports, that's the part that broke Jim Caviezel.
I believe it's going to move a lot of whistleblowers to come forward, but not one. In the hundreds, maybe thousands of them worldwide start coming forward and telling the truth of what's really going on.
Not theories, not speculation, but the realization that some of those answers might never exist. Because if what people are suggesting is even partially true, then some evidence doesn't survive. Some trails don't lead anywhere. And some stories are designed to end without conclusions. That's what makes this different. Because now, it's not just about what we know. It's about what we'll never be able to prove. And that uncertainty is what creates the deepest fear. Because humans can handle truth. They can process facts. But what they struggle with is the possibility that the truth was erased before it could ever be found. Now bring everything together. The timing, the materials, the missing links, the communication methods. Individually, they can be explained away. But together, they create a pattern that's hard to ignore.
Oprah Winfrey there with him, who entered the room and was swinging off his arm and just seemed like a very dear friend. And these, like Oprah, Naomi, Rita, and Georgina, they all sat at his table. And for me, meeting Oprah was like, oh my God, like I would have thought that I would have to be someone who's established, who everyone would have had to know about before I was privileged enough to meet someone like Oprah. So that gave me so much confidence in him.
And once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. That's the moment Caviezel reached. Not a conclusion, not a statement, just a breaking point. Witnesses say he stopped mid-sentence, tried to continue and couldn't. No performance, no exaggeration, just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't need explanation. Because everyone in the room understood. This wasn't about convincing anyone anymore. This was about confronting something that feels bigger than any one person. And that's when the question shifts. From, is this real? To something far more uncomfortable. If it is, then why hasn't anything changed? Why do some stories vanish while others dominate? Why do certain details surface, only to disappear again? Why do the same patterns repeat without interruption? And the most unsettling question of all, who benefits from people not looking deeper? Because silence isn't empty. Silence is space. And that space can be filled with anything. Distraction, doubt, denial, or truth. But only if people are willing to sit in it long enough to ask the questions that don't have easy answers. And that's where this leaves us. Not with certainty, not with closure, but with a choice. Ignore it and move on. Or look closer and risk seeing something you can't forget. Because once you cross that line, once you start connecting the pieces, this stops being just another story and becomes something else entirely. Something that lingers. Something that stays with you long after the video ends. And maybe that's the point. Not to tell you what to think, but to make sure you don't stop thinking. And now you're left with something you can't just scroll past. Because if even a fraction of this is real, then this was never just a story. It was a warning. A warning that people heard, laughed at, dismissed, and moved on from. Until the details started stacking up. Until the same patterns kept repeating. Until the silence started feeling louder than the noise. You've seen the reactions. You've heard the questions. You've watched a man who spent years speaking out finally reach a point where words failed him. So ask yourself this: why? Why do certain topics get buried while others dominate every headline? Why do the same names keep appearing around the same conversations? And why does every path seem to lead back to things no one wants to fully explain? Because this is where it stops being comfortable. This is where curiosity turns into responsibility. You don't need all the answers to recognize when something doesn't add up. And you definitely don't need permission to start asking questions. So don't just sit there and forget this the moment the video ends. If this made you feel something, say it. If this raised questions, ask them. If this doesn't sit right with you, don't ignore that instinct. Because the only thing more dangerous than what might be happening is people choosing not to look at it. Drop your thoughts below. Share this with someone who won't ignore it. And if you're ready for what comes next, stay here. Because this story isn't over. Not even close.